Hello, welcome back to Ink and Imagination. I'm Craig Cruz, author and poet, and today we're here to read another chapter in MUSSOPO and His Great Adventure. And remember, anyone can write with a little imagination. Let's read chapter 3. Eastward, maybe. MUSSOPO hid himself in the darkness, protected from the eyes of those below him. He was listening to all the sounds in the barn beneath him and to all the sounds outside of the barn as well. He heard the clucking sound of a hen as she laid an egg, and the joyful, observant child that just happened to see the shiny object of the hen's accomplishment, and happily pointed it out to his busy mother. She smiled at him and his excitement. MUSSOPO sat, secluded in the stillness of the loft. He could hear shrieks of laughter as little girls chased the goats and then were quickly and loudly told by the keepers not to chase them. The moo of the cow and the neigh of the horse, or even the grunt of a pig, always followed by the laughter of a child, were sounds that he had become accustomed to, and sounds that he loved deep in his heart. He remembered other sounds that he could hear in his mind. The sound of the whippoorwill and the bobwhite were two of his favorite sounds to hear in the forest at home. He loved birds. He remembered sitting in a tree and listening in the distance as a woodpecker would peck at the large trees, creating holes in the trunk with his beak. He remembered one time when the noise of the pecking was so loud that he could feel the vibration of the tree. He got scared and hurried into his mother's pouch. His mother climbed closer to the noise and asked the large red-headed woodpecker if he would mind pecking a different tree. The bird was apologetic and moved along to another tree close by and immediately went to work, pecking at the next hollow tree. As MUSSOPO sat daydreaming, his thoughts turned to hunger as his stomach let him know that he had not eaten. He drifted off to sleep thinking about food. After a little while, he woke to the hands of a keeper wrapping around his torso. "There you are, little one. Have you been hiding from me?" Annie asked, not expecting an answer. MUSSOPO was heartbroken. He knew that he would be back in his cage in a matter of minutes. He questioned, how would he ever get to Star? He knew that she must be scared, for she is a very timid rat. MUSSOPO was correct about his fate, and within minutes he was back in his cage. Thankfully, a large bowl of food waited for him. He heard the keepers saying that they needed to make sure that the cage was shut well, that it must have been left partially open for the possum to have been able to escape. Morgan reached in the cage and petted MUSSOPO on his head between his ears before he closed the latch. MUSSOPO was thankful that a lock was not placed on the latch. He knew that he would attempt another escape after the keepers left for the evening. It didn't take the rats very long to notice that MUSSOPO was back in his cage. The rats pushed to the edge of their cage, getting as close to MUSSOPO as possible. They hissed through the bars at him. "Where's your little friend?" MUSSOPO ignored them, moving to the opposite side of his cage. "Wait until tonight," they sneered. "We have figured a way out of here, and we are going to get even with you." Night fell again on the small zoo, and once again the keepers completed all the chores necessary to care for the animals. They locked the doors of the large barn and left for the night. Once the keepers were out of sight, the activities of animals that take place when humans are absent began. The busyness of the barn was soothing to MUSSOPO as he thought of his escape from the cage and the problem of not having a way out of the barn. His thoughts were interrupted by the rats. The rats had managed to get out of their cage and sneaked over to MUSSOPO's cage. MUSSOPO saw the lock that the three rats had brought to the door and realized that they were about to lock him into his cage. "Please don't do this," MUSSOPO pleaded, but the rats continued their endeavor. MUSSOPO stuck his long, hairless tail through the bars to try to push the lock away, but the rats bit his tail. He had no choice and watched helplessly as the lock latched together, making his escape impossible. The rats laughed at MUSSOPO and called him names and made threats to Star and how they would hurt her when they found her. They were mean rats and immediately went to wreaking havoc in the barn. They started chewing and gnawing on everything that they could. They chewed ropes of hay bales that were now broken and destroyed. Glass bowls and jars were pushed off of the shelves and plummeted to the ground, breaking into tiny pieces. The other animals now noticed that there was a problem in the barn, and they were not happy. All the other animals started making loud noises. With all this going on, it was quite chaotic in the barn. The rats ran along the ground, through the pens of the goats and sheep, biting at their legs. When they entered the horse pen, they tried biting the old mare's legs, which spooked her, making her kick at the wall behind her. This caused MUSSOPO's cage to bounce on the table that it was on. The rats continued to aggravate the horse, thinking if they kept it up that she may eventually knock the wall down. The more the horse kicked at the wall, the more the possum's cage would bounce, and the closer it would inch to the edge. Then finally it toppled over the edge, making a loud crash, which no one noticed due to all the other chaos. The front of the cage was glass, and when it hit the ground it shattered, which allowed MUSSOPO to escape, but cut one of his back legs and his long tail. MUSSOPO immediately went to hide, but knew that he was leaving a trail of blood that would lead the rats right to him. He found a hiding place near the giant doors of the barn. There he hid behind a garbage can, licked his wounds, hoping that the bleeding would stop soon. As he crouched low behind the tall silver can, he listened as the barn was being destroyed by the troublesome rats. All of a sudden, the doors of the barn flew open wide, knocking the tall can over that MUSSOPO was hiding behind. Morgan and Annie came running in toward the commotion. They raced toward the chaos of animal noises, leaving the giant doors standing open. MUSSOPO hurried out into the night, ducking behind the first bush that he approached. While taking cover, he turned to see Morgan step back to the doors and shut them. He took a moment to remember the kindness of Morgan when he would pet him on his head between his ears. But he had finally made it out of the barn, taking his first step toward his new journey. MUSSOPO's wounds were still bleeding, and he was very sore and tired from the fall, but he knew that he had to find Star and get away from the danger of being discovered by the mean rats. He also knew that daylight would come soon, and he needed to be away from the petting zoo to avoid the risk of being captured by one of the kind keepers. He decided to go ahead and make his way east because of his good sense of direction, although he feared that he would not find Star due to the lack of trees that he had noticed from the barn loft. He only hoped that he had found a safe place to stay until he could find her. MUSSOPO found himself in a large field, limping as he made his way through it. He was not bleeding as bad as he had been, but still left a trickle of blood behind with each step of the way. He walked and walked, and as the sun began to rise in the sky, he could now see the tall grass all around him, that he had only been feeling brush against his bristly hair while he had blindly walked in the dark. "Eek!" the woman screamed as she opened the mailbox to get her mail. Through the shredded paper, she felt the warm body of a little rat. The touch of the woman's hand and shrillness of her scream had awoken Star from her dreams. Bright light was coming in through the now open door to her comfortable cave. Star reached for the door to try to close it again, but she heard a loud noise and felt the ground shake. The woman had picked up a large stick and was hitting the mailbox. Star stuck her head out, trying to imagine what was causing the commotion, and the woman screamed again, "Eek!" and continued to hit the mailbox even harder. It was a long jump to the ground and another road to cross, but the rat didn't have time to think and ran as fast as she could. She wasn't sure if she was heading east, but was too afraid of the large stick and the screaming woman to even think about it. A car was coming directly at Star, but must have seen the rat and slammed on the brakes of the large vehicle. The car screeched to a stop, but not before hitting the mailbox and smashing it flat. As the man in the car got out to look at the damage, he glanced back at Star as she headed into the field on the other side of the road. "Was that a rat?" he asked the woman, who was still holding the large stick. "I don't know what it was, but it had set up residence in my mailbox," she said, pointing to the flattened mailbox that now lay on the ground. Star ran for a little while, deeper into the field until she came to a small hill with a large rock on it. She climbed up on it so that she could see. It was a beautiful sight. In the distance were trees, and at the beginning of the forest was a beautiful tall maple tree with leaves of red and orange colors from the cool fall weather that had already come to the area. Star thought that this tree looked like the sun and must be the prettiest tree in the woods, and knew that this was the tree that MUSSOPO would find. She made her way to the tree, hoping that she would soon be reunited with her friend. MUSSOPO could not go any further, and lay down in the field, hurting from the wounds from the glass that had cut him. As he lay there, he drifted off to sleep. He was out in the open field, unable to protect himself from prey above him or the prey on the ground, but he was exhausted and unable to do anything but sleep. The rats evaded the keepers and found the hole that Star had escaped from. They were able to pick up her scent and immediately started to follow after her. The rats were mean and only carried ill intention toward Star. As they hurried towards her, they stumbled upon another scent, the scent of MUSSOPO. "He is injured," they said in unison. "Forget the other rat. Let's get the possum. He will be an easy target because he is bleeding. Let's finish what we started," they sneered, running in the direction of the injured MUSSOPO. That was Chapter 3, Eastward, Maybe. Thanks for listening to this chapter of MUSSOPO and His Great Adventure. Until the next chapter, keep imagining and pick up a pen. The next story could be yours.